up, everybody? Welcome back to the Discussion Lounge. We had a nice little break. We were off for spring break, and I think like the week before we maybe didn't do anything. Sorry about that. But we are back now. One of our guests, our hosts here, actually, Hector. He just had some amazing family news, right? That he just put out there in the world, and that's that he is going to be a dad. So, congratulations to you, sir. You and your lovely wife Jasmine are going expecting a baby, and that's awesome, wonderful. Spreading the love and putting more awesome people in the world. It's gonna be a COVID baby, right? One of them COVID babies that are going around because everybody's home, they got shit to do, and they're Netflixing and all this stuff, and extra time, idle hands, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but Jasmine doesn't like that phrase. Only because we have been trying for quite a while. So even before prior to COVID. So that's
but
why
you've been
technically
married for a
for us,
year, haven't you?
we've been married for almost two
2
years.
years now. Okay,
Yeah.
that's a
So
while.
yeah. Without getting into the details, but yeah. So we had this premeditated way before COVID, and then COVID happened, and then like I guess technically,
So COVID infringed on your plan already. It was not like okay,
well,
not.
it just happened. It just happened in the way that it's gonna pop out during COVID. So what are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do exactly?
What are you
No,
gonna do?
man, but yeah, congratulations, dude. That's awesome
Thank you, thank
news,
you.
and we're all happy for you. It's such great news, but apparently it doesn't matter because we're in a simulation. That shit's fake, bro. So we're gonna do something different today. We're actually gonna talk about simulation theory. This is something that I'm like super interested in, but really hard for me to explain because I have little pee brain, and I'm just somewhere. I'm just not at that level to discuss it. But I'm going to make an attempt here with the master of philosophy and the master of engineering here. And we're gonna get straight into it, man. Geo, are we in a simulation? Are you here? Are we here?
So if you accept a certain set of premises, it looks like we are almost definitely are in a simulation. Like 100%, if not like 99.9999% chance that we are in a simulation. And so I can outline the premises for you guys if you want to get into it.
I would love for you to do that, Hector. But
Yeah.
before that, Hector, are we in a simulation?
I'm gonna say no. We are not in a simulation. That's it. That's my answer.
Okay, I definitely don't know. The more you start hearing about sim theory, the more it kind of like starts blowing your mind, right? And you're like, oh my god, like this is actually like a possibility. We've seen it in movies, right? It's been recreated over and over again in things like The Matrix, and who knows, right? But Geo, I would love for you to outline why you think we're in a simulation and the evidence.
Okay. So it's more of an argument, right? It's like a philosophical argument, and it's almost like math. Like you have to take math for what it is, right? It doesn't necessarily represent reality, but it's a really good like representation of what it could be, right? And so there are three premises that we need to accept before we then say, okay, this is very likely that we are not in base reality, but we're in some sort of like uh, emulation or something that's being created at a level higher than base reality, right? So the first premise is that it is physically possible to to develop more and more sophisticated simulations over time. We already know that we are making pretty good ones right now, right? If we go to, like on Grand Theft Auto, like the simulations are pretty good now, and we're they're going to continue to get better for a while. But let's say that the first premise is that they will continue to get way better to the point that if you jump into one, like you can't even tell the pixelation is so high that it pretty much resembles base reality, and you're able to emulate like touch and sensation, taste, all these things by just like driving information into your brain, right, by connecting so first you got to accept like that all your sites are dependent on electrical stimulation to the brain, right? And physically that seems to be what's happening. So that's the first premise. right? That we're going to continue to make really good simulations, and at one point they're going to be like really, really good to the point that they're indistinguishable from reality. The second premise is that we, as either us as humans or our successors, are going to allow this to happen, right? That for some, if not for some legal reason or some moral argument, we ban these simulations, then we're going to continue to we're going to allow this to happen, right? Not that it's physically possible, but we allow it as a civilization. And then the third premise is that we, given these simulations, we run what are called ancestor simulations, where let's say in the year 3000, somebody builds a simulation that runs what Earth was like at the beginning of the 21st century, like it is right now, and they're running these simulations with people in them that are virtual like us, and they're acting out in the way that we're acting out our world right now, right? That okay. So first, that so these are the three premises: that simulations are possible, that we allow them to happen, and that we build ancestor simulations, which is a specific type of simulation. Given that, we will, I guess, an extra requirement is that we not only build one, but we build billions of these simulations, right? Kind of like we build billions of computers now, right? We have billions of computers all over the world. We build billions of these simulations all running in right concurrently. So then the argument then states that where are you most likely to have been born? There's one base reality, and there are billions of simulations running. Where are you most likely to have been born? By statistics, you are most likely to have been born in one of the simulations than the base reality, because there's way more of them, right? If you were to draw a random like dart,
Theoretically, right? Like
theoretically, yeah.
there would be way more simulations. There would be a possibility of there being like one real Earth, like real life and real
Hmm.
experience, right? Like you only get one, you die, that's it. Like
Yeah. When you're born, you roll the dice and you figure out where did you land. Did you land in one of the simulations, or did you land in the one base reality, right? And then it seems like, well, just from the odds, the numbers, you're more likely to have been born in a simulation, given the other three premises.
yeah. Hector,
Yes.
do you have a counter, or do you want to like explain maybe why you think we're definitely not in a simulation?
I don't have a counter for the three premises or arguments laid down by Geo. What I do want to do though is sort of like throw like a couple of wrenches into this machine and see if it clogs anything up, or at least if it's able to sort of work it out, right? I'm not just intuitively, right? Like I'm saying that I don't think we're in a simulation. That's not me saying that it's not possible. It's well, I mean, it's possible. So let's start with my first thought when I when we decided to talk about this was, and maybe Jill already addressed this, but if I'm a simulation, right? Am I a biological mind, or am I a simulated mind? What I'm trying to distinguish here is if am I do I exist somewhere in the, let's call it like the real world, right? You said, what was the first one? What was the, what
Oh,
did you call it, Gio? The
base reality.
base reality. Yeah. So am I a biological thing, or is my mind biological in the base reality, or am I a simulated mind? Like, was I made within the simulation? That's one. So we could start there, right? We could start, Alan, if you want to.
So I think what you're saying is like what you're trying to ask, like what the structure of this simulation would be, right?
Yeah.
So are we actually like how far in the simulation, right? Because like Gio said, we can be as far as in 3000 or even more in the future, somebody trying to simulate the world. And they got it down to a program where they already just have like minds that are just programs and numbers, right? Or we can be either we can be way before that time where they're still actually using bodies, right? And they're just using like actual like tweaking stuff in their neurons to make them feel, taste, and experience or whatever like that, right? Um,
Right.
so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, and the reason I asked this question is because I want to sort of lay down. I guess it paves ways to other question, right? Like, for example, what's the purpose, right? Does it serve a purpose, like this simulation, right? And is it why is it that it is the way it's set up, right? Why are we sort of being simulated in, I guess, a time that perhaps already passed, you know, and it's not um, I also wonder if like if we're mirroring the base reality in any way. It's like sort of like we're running together with time, and this is just an alternative, um, reality or sim reality where we're able to play out certain decisions that we made or didn't make in our base reality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Geo.
Yeah, these are all interesting questions. So the first one, I guess, is the question is whether our minds are simulated or are they real minds that are being stimulated.
Right.
Right.
And if and it doesn't have to be 100% one or the other, right? Or
Mm,
it doesn't have to be uh, a disjunction, right? It could be it could just be two things happening at the same time, right? It could be that we do have our simulated minds together with biological minds.
yeah. So the way I would go about trying to figure that out is to, so if let's, assuming the first premise, right, that it's the first argument, or the simulation argument is really a statistical argument. It invokes large numbers in order to say that this is overwhelmingly likely that this is the case, right, that we're in a simulation. So we said that you can build billions of simulations because we have the resources to build billions of computers, right? And that's how we get those large numbers. And so then I would say that it seems to be more it seems to be easier to build simulated realities than to build real realities, right? Because a simulated reality, you can sort of truncate it and leave things out that don't necessarily need to be rendered. Like for example, in a video game, you're like looking ahead, right, and you see the landscape, and you see everything being rendered with all the other characters. But that doesn't mean that everything behind you is being rendered in real time, right? Like as you look around, things are rendered here and then rendered here, and so you can leave things out and of the simulation and have it still run convincingly, right? And so you can say that simulations are actually easier to build than real realities, and you could probably extend that to minds as well, right? A mind is much a real mind, I think, requires more resources, more energy than a simulated mind does. I guess it depends on the complexity, but like I said, you can leave things out that are not necessarily required to be running concurrently from a simulated entity than a real brain that requires blood, that requires all these like physical resources to maintain, when all you really need on a simulated mind is electricity, right, or just pure energy, and then run the computer in that way. So if that's the case, then there might be more simulated minds than there are real minds. And then again, where are we most likely to be? Because there's more simulated minds, I think it's more likely, given the same like logic, right, that our minds are also being simulated, rather than we are real minds that are just like hooked up to the matrix or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah. To me, yeah. Go ahead, Hector.
No, no, go.
Yeah. So yeah, I get all that, right? So that's a whole statistical thing, right? Huge numbers, everything would be harder to create more realities than actual simulated realities. So the second question that Hector proposed, right? What would be the purpose? Like,
Mhm.
what is the purpose of? And somebody has to be running this reality eventually, like at one time or another, right? Like,
Mhm.
what is the purpose of having a simulation and not having people have like actual like lives, or live in the world that the people who are running the simulation live in?
Mhm. Okay, so let's look at why do we run simulations right now? You know, there are multiple reasons. Sometimes it's for entertainment. You know, we run citywide simulations in Grand Theft Auto so we can entertain certain individuals, right? Another reason might be for scientific purposes to understand certain phenomenon, like uh, or maybe more to the point of like an ancestor simulation is to understand the political complexities of an environment, right? Like what politics was like at the 21st century. If you want to find out, why not just run a simulation, right? Given the variables that you know and all the data that you know about. Uh, in the point in 1,000 years from now, when you try to run it and see like why how things would evolve, right? Or if you change up certain parameter, let's say you killed Hitler before he became, um, dictator of Germany. Run a simulation on that and see how the world would have evolved if you had done that, right? So, yeah, one is entertainment, right? Or just look at the reasons we do it right now. One is entertainment, and another one is for learning purposes.
Hector.
Okay. Might be pausing a little bit just to gather my thoughts. Uh, okay, so we're most likely this is for entertainment, but I'm
Could
also
be, yeah.
thinking it could be right, could be, it could, but I'm also thinking like what, like if the base, reality, what if it's like all, turned to crap and things are just so bad that it's better off living this way in a sim reality because it's much nicer and more pleasant.
Hmm.
It could
Yeah,
also that
yeah.
I mean that could also be the case. I I mean, but if the base reality is a world or a reality where we, we seem to have, some sort of technology that is far superior than what I'm imagining right now or I'm going through right now, right? Then it must be, and then therefore, then I could assume that it must be a better world than whatever this reality or sim reality is, right? So why would I want to go into a sim reality um, if it's lesser than my base reality? Assuming I have a choice, assuming I had the choice to come here, right? Unless I was forced, or like
Hmm.
you said, it could be an experiment. I volunteered. Yeah. What about that? What do you guys think
Yeah.
about that?
We again assume, like, from our point of view, right? I don't recall ever plugging into the Matrix, so I'm, for all intents, from what I can tell, I was born here in this reality, right? So unless my thoughts were altered somehow, right, like reprogrammed or something, like my memories erased and reprogrammed for some reason, but uh, we could assume that. So you're saying, why go into the simulation if we have all this technology, then our that life or that world must be better because we have all this technology, right? To run simulations. Well, like, just because we have more technology doesn't mean it's a utopia, right? It could be like a corporate like dictatorship, and we run simulations to escape that, like you said. There's so much speculation, right? Like, you can speculate all kinds of things about the motivations of people who would want to simulate realities. I guess we can only go off of what we're doing, right? We're creating better and better simulations, and we're not stopping. And we do run ancestor simulations from time to time, right? There's like World War II like simulations, video games,
Yeah.
and so we're all that is following the premise. And so, um, I guess, what are you? Is that an attempt to disprove, or you're just answering or asking a question?
Yeah. I'm just interesting. Sorry, interested. Also, another thing that came into my head is uh, how real are you? I mean, like in this, if this is a simulation, you could be simulated. Alan is simulated, right? You guys don't exist to me, right? Like
Um,
yeah, like so. I guess you want to call it like I don't know what's the proper.
Well, we're all dropping into the same lobby, like in a video
Okay,
game.
so okay, and so then that okay, so it goes back to my question. If we're all within the same lobby, you still might not be real. You are artificially created, right,
mhm,
within the
Mm-hmm.
sim, and
Mm-hmm.
so is Geo. I could be the only biological one, or
mhm,
we could all be sims, created and non-biological, or we're all biological. We just, like Geo said, we don't have prior knowledge of where we were before all this in the base reality, right?
mhm,
Which now brings me to one of the more famous skeptic philosophers, Rene Descartes, right? Cogito ergo sum, which is Latin for "I think, therefore I am," and his whole argument is based on skepticism, except for one thing, right? He says that I could be fooled into thinking and believing that everything is real or that everything is fake, right? I could be fooled, by a greater power, but there's one thing that can't be done by anyone else, and that is that I am. If I'm able to think, then therefore I am, right? And no one could fool me into thinking.
mhm.
And so, I
Yeah.
mean, that the argument itself has some flaws, and it has been, obviously, been tackled by many philosophers, in his time and even now, right? But we won't get into that. We're just gonna take it as face value, right? If we're considering like the fact that I'm thinking right now in my
Mhm,
head, right? Then I must exist.
mhm,
I have to exist, right?
mhm. Yeah.
um and but if you tell me that you exist, right, I don't know that. I could be like, I have no idea if you exist, bro, but in my head I exist, right? But I'm sure in your head you're having the same thought, right? But for some reason we can't confirm it. We can't affirm each other's existence to each
Mhm.
other, like only I could to myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can respond to that, but
Oh,
go for it, Alan.
so no, yeah. Go ahead if you want to respond to that.
Okay, so I think you're referring to the methodical doubt, right? And that's what he went about. He started doubting. He said it was a thought experiment, right? He was like, I can doubt, I can start doubting my senses. I can start doubting the existence of other people. I can start doubting my reality because I could be dreaming, or I can start doubting all these things because there's like a malevolent like little demon that's just like manipulating everything in a way that is trying to fool me, right? But then he comes to the conclusion that the only thing that he cannot doubt is the fact that he exists himself. Because if he did not exist, then he would not be able to run the thought experiment, think about these things, right? Or say anything, right? Say the thought. So I would say that okay, we let's say we are simulations, right? We're just code on a computer. I don't think that necessarily means that we are not real, right? There is something there. It's just that the reality is different than what we think it is, right? That we're not actually composed of flesh and blood, but we are real, but we're composed of code, right? We're running on a substrate that is different than what we assume. That it's more it's that it's the simulation, right? So just because we're a simulation doesn't negate Rene Descartes' like I think therefore I am statement. Just because you're code doesn't mean you're not real. It's just you're different than what you think you are, right? And you can still think. You can still the code can still think and can still learn and can still change and can still come up with these thoughts.
Okay.
Um,
um yeah, go ahead.
no, you go.
Real quick, yeah, real quick. Okay, so um let me just ask this question then. I'm not trying. Again, I'm just asking questions, not necessarily taking a position here, just because again I'm just interested in what both of you have to say about this. So if you guys are simulated, right? Let's say you guys are simulated. right? Your minds and your, we could say to some extent that you guys exist, and as do I, right? But I'm biological. So get rid of the sim, unplug it. How much do you exist more than I do? Because if I get unplugged, I get to wake up and I get to still, you know, have a thought and probably have a body. Maybe not. Maybe I'm a brain in a vat, but it's still a biological, physical thing. But if you guys get unplugged, right, where does your existence, hold if you're unplugged?
Okay. So I think that that line of thought would uh, imply that there's some sort of primalness about biological entities as opposed to digital entities. Because we can use the same sort of wording for biological entities when it comes to unplugging somebody, right? Like if your heart is failing, then you can technically unplug, and you're being held up by technology. You can unplug that technology and then have them die. Or another way of saying unplugging is just like killing somebody, right? You could shut down a biological organism in the same way that you shut down a simulation. Just because you're biological doesn't mean you are immune to being or immortal or not. You're not able to destroy the substance in which your consciousness is running on, right? So it's just a different substrate. It's different substance in which the consciousness is running. One is silicon based or whatever the computer, right? It could be a quantum computer that's running in a vat or something. And another one is like a brain, which has carbon and nitrogen and oxygen, right? You can still be running consciousness is on both substrates. But just because you unplug this one doesn't mean you can also not unplug the biological one.
Yeah, it makes me think of like Ultron, right? Like he's able to kind of jump through different physical forms, right? And sort of like operate in that sense. But even if you get rid of all the forms, all physical form, all matter, like he still somehow exists somewhere out there, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. You can also argue that artificial life might be more resilient than biological life. Like I said earlier, artificial minds or simulations, the amount of resources required to run them can be smaller than the amount of resources required to run a real system or a biological system, right?
Don't tell that to
Because
the
you
government.
can't. What do you mean?
Don't tell that to the government.
What do you mean? What are you saying?
Oh, so like imagine you tell them like, hey, it's a better bargaining chip to just run a bunch of AIs, get rid of everybody. Mm,
Oh yeah, yeah.
we could do that.
Well, well, it's not
If,
just the
if
government that thinks that. It's corporations think that too, right?
corporations,
Yeah.
oh yeah, um, yeah, I still have a bone to pick with artificial intelligence. I think it's because I'm just be honest. Like I think because it threatens like whatever it is we think life is, right?
Hmm.
Like whatever
Yeah.
value we have for life, I think is sort of like a competition or a threat. I think that's what triggers me,
Hmm.
and I don't know why. I'm guessing it's because of that, right? I just kind of shake my head like I don't know if
Yeah.
AI would ever, we ever accept AI as a living thing.
Hmm.
Um, but anyways, Alan, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
I've just been. I've had like a lot of questions. But what I wanted to bring up in the brain in a vat experiment was the whole thing about ethics, right? Like if we were on in some kind of simulation, then like why do we care like what happens to other people?
Like, what do you mean? Like in the sim world,
Yeah,
or
like in our world right now, like why aren't we just fucking killing each other and raping each other like on a fucking like a bigger scale?
okay, what if that's like sort of where like the type of game you're playing? Like you're playing like a sort of like a friendly like Super Mario game, right? You're not playing Grand Theft Auto. So it's kind of sort of like either you by choice picked to be in this simulation, or you volunteered, or you were forced to be in here. But again, that still takes me back to like the question of like, well, what's the purpose of that then, right? Like there has to be.
Yeah.
I know Gio was saying like, these questions, we could go back and forth with these questions, right? And we're never really gonna be able to answer them. But I think they're important. I think we're able to sort of, um, I think if we're able to start answering these questions, we could weave out the worst possibilities and stick with the good ones, right?
Yeah.
Like probable.
Uh, oh, sorry.
Oh, also, like, it's like the what is it called, the base reality, right? I mean, the Sims are sort of, they're sort of like derivations of the base reality, right? To some extent,
Could
like
be.
we're able to kind of transfer some, like Alan was brought in ethics, right?
Mhm.
Like there's ethics I mean, if there's ethics here in the sim world, then there has to be some sort of ethics in the base reality. Um, I don't, like, for example, take a unicorn, right? Like it's sort of like a bunch of things and objects and shapes that we could find in the real world, right? Nothing about it is sort of like this thing that we can fathom in our minds, right? So they derive from our own creation. Same with the sim reality. I mean the base reality, right? Whatever is going on there, like we transfer some of that over to this. It might not be 100% exact or even 1% exact, but there's some of it here.
Mhm.
So what yeah, so I don't know, like what are we trying to accomplish, in this sim reality?
I'll take a shot at Alan's question about like why don't we just kill each other
Mm-hmm.
because none of this is real, right? Or none of this is real. Well, I think it's if let's say we are in a simulation, right? Let's assume that. Um, w- the reason why you would not act in that way is the exact same reason why you would not act that way in the real world or in the base reality, because there are consequences, even if the consequences are simulated, right? You have like an inherent like urge to survive, and if you start like pissing off the wrong people, then you're going to cease to exist, even if your existence is virtual, right? Your virtual avatar or the code that's running your consciousness could still have a self-preservation instinct, right? Because it evolved in the simulation. So one answer for the purpose of the simulation. I think probably the my favorite one would probably be a scientific experiment, but it could be like the biggest one of all. It could be that we're running a computer. Somebody decided that they want to run a computer simulation on the Big Bang, right? They set up the parameters and they ran a simulation on what the beginning of the universe was like, and it exploded right in their computer in a simulation. And within that simulation, you had the formation of galaxies and planets and all the molecules that exist in the simulation. And somewhere inside the simulation, inside the billions of galaxies that formed, you have what we call Earth, right? Form, and you had human life emerge in the simulated reality, right? So our entire history of the universe, our entire world history could have been simulated, and we're just here acting out the simulation, and all the laws that we've come up with apply here, right? All the morals that we've come up with, all the ethics and the ways we behave apply here because they serve the purpose of our existence.
Yeah. Hector,
What
I think you had something.
what if I'm the only one in the simulation?
It's
I'm the only
what
one
do you mean?
acting out the simulation. I'm the only one acting out the simulation.
We would have to take your word for it, or can you prove it? I would ask you, can you prove it? And then you would say, no, I don't want to. And so then that's it. That's where
Right.
ends.
So then that okay, so then that leads me, that's great because it leads me to the sort of the, what is it called? The infinite regress, infinite regress fallacy, right? Where not you, but a skeptic is able to ask me, how do you know that X is the case? And then I say, because of Y. And then you say, well, how do you know Y is the case? Well, because of Z. How do you know Z is the case? Until I'm not able to answer, then I can't know for sure. And that's when the skeptic says, see, you don't know, so you can't say. So it's sort of like the skeptic picks like this arbitrary, reason why, something is not the case, right?
Hmm.
It begs the question more than answers it.
Yeah,
Um,
there's no
yeah,
answer in there. Yeah, it doesn't go anywhere to claim that,
yeah,
because then I can claim the same thing, right? And
right.
Alan can claim the same thing. It doesn't really take us anywhere.
Yeah, so it's yeah, so it could be, or it could. I mean, what if that's how the sim is programmed, right? That's how it's set up.
Hmm.
To have doubts and all this, right? Because if we're simulating reality or a base reality, you have sort of all these things too, right? You have doubts and skepticism and all that, right?
Hmm.
You're not certain about a lot of things in this world, like we don't know much about anything,
Hmm.
truthfully, right? um we don't even know if we die, right? I mean, Alan and I
Yeah.
were kind of, we're, one of our high school uh, teachers, just recently passed, and we're talking about death, and then Alan said, jokingly, like, well, like I said that, well, we're all kind of headed that way. It's a sad truth of reality. And then he's like, no, 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 it's for you, not me, because I'm in a sim, right? So you get to die, not I don't get to die, so
Like
that's
can die if you're fake.
Well, okay, so even if we try to poke holes at the supposed scenario, the premises that have been outlined and then the conclusions still, I think, are there, and there's no there would need to be a way to argue against the premise and the argument for the simulation, right? The fact that we are creating better simulations, that we're not stopping, and we can theoretically in the future create a Big Bang simulation where we just and create multiple Big Bang simulations, and then ask where are we most likely to be.
So I want to throw it back to a conversation we had before. Could this be aliens simulating us?
Hmm.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a good question. Like, who's the like you and you brought it up earlier too, like who's pulling the strings, right?
Yeah,
And
and all the stuff that like all the like ancient alien stuff that we can't explain, those are all just Easter eggs.
Could be. So even if an alien civilization is simulating this, it's still all everything still applies, right? It's just not humans that are creating simulations. It's some alien civilization. An alien civilization is like, let's create a big bang in a computer, boom, and then all kinds of planets emerge, all kinds of civilizations emerge out of this simulation, and we're just one of them, right? We're not that special, and we're just here acting out, thinking like we are.
Yeah. And then when we were talking about it being so advanced that we could probably just be programs or numbers and stuff like that, right? Um, could we be AI that is getting too smart for itself by having these conversations?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm implying. I'm implying that, that's what I believe, right? Or that's what I'm leaning towards, that we're not brains in a vat, like Hector was asking earlier. That we're not like, we don't have a physical component. That we're actually, in for all intents and purposes, we're AI
Hmm.
being simulated in a simulation, and this AI evolved naturally in the simulation.
Interesting. Yeah. Does anyone have any other theories or
yeah,
questions,
I
Hector?
just I'm drawing a blank. I had it in the tip of my tongue. You might have to edit because I need to remember.
Yeah. I mean, it's all super interesting stuff for sure. Is there any like other similar like theories that people that talk about sim theory have, other than the ones that we've talked about?
Yeah, yeah. There's an idea called a Boltzmann brain. Boltzmann was a physicist. He lived at the turn of the 20th century. He did like a lot of quantum mechanics and thermodynamics kind of stuff, and he talked about like thermodynamics in physics is a very like statistical practice where you talk about like billions and trillions of particles moving in a gas, right? And you talk about like entropy. I'm sure you guys heard of entropy as like increasing disorder in the world. Everything's like, if you look at like, let's say you have a balloon in a room, right, full of a gas. Everything is also is oxygen, but in this balloon there's helium, right? And you pop the balloon, the helium is going to start here, right? But over time is going to spread out, right, over the entire room,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually is going to be evenly distributed throughout the entire room, and you're going to have equilibrium is what it's called. And that's because of just random interactions between the helium itself and the oxygen, right, in the environment. Um, but you could argue that over a really long time, like maybe longer than the lifetime of the universe, eventually, just through random fluctuations, you could have all the helium come back to the shape of a balloon, right? A really long time from now. So then a Boltzmann brain is the idea that over a really long time, you have a random assortment of particles just like bouncing around hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, whatever, and then over a really long time, eventually they just randomly come together and they make a brain out of nowhere.
Okay. So
Right?
yeah,
It
just
didn't. It didn't evolve. It didn't. It wasn't created. It just through random fluctuations of just random particles, and given a really long time, you have the emergence of these brains, and it's called the Boltzmann brain. And that could be what we are, right? That could be that. Like there's one brain that's just running everything, and it's imagining us having this conversation. And so that's kind of related to that. It's more of a like a thought experiment. Like no, I don't think anybody takes it seriously, but it is sort of related
it's like a
to
Big
the idea.
Bang brain.
Yeah.
Cool. Hector.
Yeah, question. So I don't think it's no, it's not related to what you guys were saying right now. I was just thinking. Um, so again, assuming we're these AIs, right? We're not biological. There's nothing, you know, we're not made out of matter. We're just programs, and we've evolved to be this way, right? That's possible, right? In the sim world, we
Yeah.
evolved to be this way, and I could therefore keep assuming that we're gonna keep evolving, correct? And what if we
Mhm.
evolve to the point, or one of us, or some of us evolve to the point that we're able to figure out that, or we're able to verify that we are in fact in a sim, right? And now the question is, what next, right? Like what is it? It's sort of like finding out, the red pill, blue pill, right? Like you find out that this is all fake, right? What do you do next? What can you do next, right? Like if this is all we have, right? If this is our reality and it's always going to be a reality, what next, right? Like how would that impact your life or your sim life, if any?
I would say that one thing we could try to do is try to make contact with the original simulator, right? That if we are in fact in a simulation, I think making contact with them and trying to understand why they started the simulation might be like a really important thing to do,
Well, if the
right?
Truman Show taught us anything, the simulator will contact us
Mm.
because we're gonna try to find ways out, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think the simulation argument is probably the best argument, like scientific argument for the existence of God. Like if you try to like do it scientifically and through like an analysis,
So we're the
uh,
simulation that they gave us that they put God in.
no, 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 no. That like if you're going to talk about a creator
Oh,
of the universe, that and you talk about a simulation that we're in a simulation, then God is a simulator, and what
He's
they created is a simulation.
he's just a dork.
Yeah.
Some nerd. Man,
Or
God.
or he doesn't know anything about us. He's just running like a huge simulation, and he doesn't even know that we emerged randomly in some corner of the simulation.
Oh, we're like a virus on his computer, and we're like gonna take over.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have antivirus.
Hmm.
Whack ass God without antivirus. Imagine that shit. Um, uh, is it possible? Is there any theories where we do break out?
We could, off the top of my head, I like let's say we make contact with the simulator and we ask him, "Hey, can you build bodies for us out there, like robotic bodies?" And then we'll upload our simulated minds onto the robot so then we can walk around in the real world? Can you do that for us? And if he says yeah, then yeah, that's one way to get out.
What if he just be like, oh yeah, like this is, let me just simulate to you guys what it is over here.
He
And then
puts
he
us in
just
another
puts us in
simulation.
another simulation.
What if what if what if this is a simulation to see if that will work in the real world? Like
Mm.
what if this whole program is to see if we're able to escape out and then be in bodies, and if it's gonna work, if it's not gonna work, because if we end up turning on them for some reason, then he's all like, nah, I don't want that.
Then we could have already revolted, and this is the second simulation he put us in, saying it was the real world.
Th- That was the theory that some people had. You know, at the end of the second Matrix, when Neo like is able to shut down those machines outside of
Yeah,
of the Matrix, people
yeah.
were like, "Oh, he's probably in another Matrix, and the machines are just fooling everybody." Right? And that was one theory behind
Oh,
that.
wow. Okay.
But that reminds me of another point, like that people have made about containing artificial intelligence, right? Because we could, like, the theory is like we create an AI kind of like Skynet that's just going to be so intelligent that it outsmarts everybody immediately and just kills everybody.
Yeah.
One way to try to combat that is like we try to run an AI kind of like Skynet, but we fool it into thinking that the thing that it's interacting with is the real world, but it's in fact inside a simulation in a way to contain its like effects and try to test it to see how it would behave if we suddenly gave it a few powers,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like let's say like connected to nukes or whatever, but the nukes are simulated, and then see how it behaves, and then if it fails the test, then we shut it down and start over, right?
Oh, interesting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Hector, anything?
Red pill, blue pill. Which one would you take?
Stay in the Matrix or see what the real world is like? Shit, man.
Red pill, red pill all the way.
So wait, red one is see the real
You get,
thing,
yeah,
Yeah.
get
Red
out,
one
yeah.
is find out the reality of how things are. It could be better, it could be neutral, or it could be worse,
and then
or anywhere in that spectrum.
you're gonna be in that cave with fucking Cornell West.
Yes, Cornel West was in the Matrix.
Yeah,
He
We
was
just
in the
found that
Matrix.
out. Or I
We
found that out.
forgot, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He was in the Matrix, guys.
yeah, good shit,
He
Hector.
was one of the council members. Yep.
Yeah. I don't know, dude. Like, I mean, because there was no like, even if when they lived in that matrix, right? I mean, in the real world, right? Outside of the simulation, that shit was whack, bro. And then you got these huge ass robots like coming after you. You don't know what is gonna like. You're gonna be a what? Like a fugitive. Um, you're there's not gonna be a fucking Neo, right? You're just gonna be like these outsiders who are escape the simulation or whatever, and no one's gonna take care of you. Who knows what it's gonna be like? Who knows what's out there? I don't know, man. Scary,
Yeah, we don't know.
scary talk. And then you don't even know what they're if they're even like if there isn't like a revolution for you to join where shit could be better. Like you probably be like you exit the simulation, and then like what if you can't even breathe in that fucking in the planet that you're on or whatever, and you just fucking choke or like I don't know. You could literally unplug yourself and then just see it for a second and then die because like you can't fucking like live in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you could be you if you unplug and you're in your final breaths, and the only thing that was keeping you alive was being plugged in, then you're
Yeah.
screwed, man. So yeah, you're taking a big chance with that red pill. It's definitely a big chance, right? Um, I don't know, man. I That's a tough one. I don't know which one I would take. What if I take both? What happens?
COVID.
Overdose.
OD get taken to Sim Hospital.
Yeah. Dude, like, what if I gave you that choice right now, Hector? You're about to have a baby. I'd be like, hey, dude,
Yeah,
red pill, blue pill, homie.
it's hard.
I think I will say no. I'll be like, I'll stay here. You know what? It reminds me of I don't know which particular utilitarian philosopher, which basically they're like consequentialists. They think about like making the choices that will inevitably like lead you to the happiest life, right? So you make all your choices based on that, right? Um, anyways, I think they asked him about, whether or not God exists and if there's an afterlife, right? I guess we could, if we could make it synonymous with this theory, it would be like, well, if you knew that there was something after this, right? Like the sim reality, I mean, the base reality, like, how, like, does that change anything? And he said, um, whether there is something out there that's greater or if there's an afterlife or whatever, he thought like you just have to assume that this is it right here, right? So just make the best out of this situation, whatever it is. It could be a fake reality, a real reality. It doesn't matter. Like the point is that you're always gonna have to, live the best life, no matter where you're at. So I think that's kind of where I'm leading to with this thought, like if you present to me with what I have right now, like I'll just stay here and I'll make the best of this reality or this sim reality.
Yeah,
Mhm.
100%. Um,
I guess I'm just a curious person. I just like fuck it, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
There yeah, there I also remember a while back, in my when I was doing school, there was a survey being done actually, uh, with the same question, and I think it was I think a little bit over like 54% or 55% of the people said that they will stay where they're at. They'll take the blue pill,
Hmm.
not wanting to know. Actually, no, I'm lying. They would say they would, right? But
That
then
they
when you
would
raise
want
this,
to know.
yeah, they would want to know the reality. But then when they did what you did to me,
Yeah.
you raise the stakes,
Hmm.
then that percentage went down.
Yeah, man. Because you
So
could unplug and then you're like, "Dig, Jasmine doesn't even exist. Like you made her up. We made her up in your simulation." You know, or like, or she could exist and then you unplug and then you go find her and then you go unplug her and and then she's like, "Dig, in my simulation, I'm not even married to you. Who the fuck are you?" D. Oh!
I guess it also depends like who's offering me these drugs. You know, is this guy trustworthy? Like, should
The
I be
homie on
taking
the
these
down the
bro,
pills?
corner, Tito.
Samuel Jackson, bro.
Yeah. If he doesn't look like Morpheus, I'm not doing it.
Yeah, that's good. That's something to consider.
All right, guys, if you have anything else to add, I think that was a really fun conversation. We got about a little less than an hour in. But yeah, dude, it was all very stimulating. And I'm going to go simulate eating a burger right now. So, anything else you guys want to add before we leave?
I want to ask one more time, same question that we asked at the beginning, right? So did any of this change your thought on sim theory, Alan?
I still don't. I
Yeah.
think I'm on the fence still, man. Like I honestly don't know. It's a lot of information, and when you think about theories like that, it's always like, man, like it could happen, right? And then like just when you think about, I don't know, like how big we think like or know space is, like that shit's not even real. It's simulation, fool. Like this is not, like it's just it's a lot of
Dude,
stuff to think about. Like going to the
first,
moon, think simulation, all this shit, like not real.
is this brick wall a real brick wall?
No, because I could see the line on the left where the light's coming in,
Really?
and
It's
yeah,
just that light. It's just the lighting in my room, bro.
dude,
That's why I have it.
simulation light.
It's real. It took me like 3 hours to paint this.
It's moving. I
Uh,
can see wave on the side. Someone's gonna walk through it right now, like Kool Aid Man and shit. Um. Well, guys, it was fun, man. Geo, Hector,
Geo, we didn't ask. Oh, sorry, we didn't ask Geo. Geo,
Oh, Geo, sorry.
yeah, or
So
myself too.
okay, so I'll go first. Um, I want to say that even so there are a lot of people that have come forward, a lot of like famous people, Elon Musk, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that have come out and said, yeah, there's not really a good argument against this. And I know Elon Musk is actually leaning towards it, and there's a really good conversation between him and Joe Rogan from like a year ago where they start talking about this. So we got they stand there, and I think that the argument is pretty good given the premises. Like it could be that we don't develop simulations big enough to do this kind of stuff. It could be that we outlaw them for moral reasons, like say like we want to simulate the medieval ages, right? Like who would want to do that? Like all the suffering you would cause to all these little sims, right?
Yeah.
By simulating that. So maybe we don't want to do that. But if we do go forward with that, it does seem like the argument holds up, and but there's no way to prove it, right? It's a philosophical argument, and it may be more of a a thought experiment to try to stimulate brain activity like we just did. And also, one last thing: if we are simulated, I don't think it means that we are not real, right? We're still data, right? We're still like information, just like we are information inside a real brain, right? The brain is
Mm-hmm.
simulating. The brain is creating consciousness, and the simulation is creating consciousness. Both consciousness are equally valid, and so I don't think that like, oh, the moon, like it's simulated. No, it's the moon. It's our moon, and we should still go and explore it.
Okay. Hector?
Uh, I'm still gonna say that this is as real as it gets. That we're not in a simulation, and it just goes back to just my intuition. I don't think there's anything wrong with assuming that that's the case, right? Only because I was never one to wait for the answer, right? Like I don't stand in a neutral position on a lot of things like this, right? Um, but I think it's just how I'm built. It's just how my circumstances and all my upbringings, how I was raised, whatever, right? All that led me into just thinking into just have your position, but I'm also fair, right? And I'm also considerate. I'm also understanding that it could be the case that other people don't think that way, right? Like Gio, right? And 100% like I would, be like, dude, that might be true, like it could be true too. And I'm not afraid of that. I think that's one of the things where people are sort of like afraid to stand in a definite position without having any knowledge of it,
Mm-hmm.
because either they're afraid of being wrong or they're afraid of the truth, right? I'm not afraid if this was indeed, if Jill one day says like, hey bro, we're in a sim, I'm about to unplug you, I'll be like, damn, okay, let's all right, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, that's gonna be it for us tonight. Thank you guys so much for tuning into our videos that we have up. The subscribers that have been subscribing. Hopefully we can keep getting some. And yeah, man, just watch the content if you enjoy it, and drop us a like, a subscribe, leave us a comment, all that good stuff, man. And yeah, thank you guys so much, and we'll be back soon.